So for about a month now, I've been wanting to make this vlog. I just haven't had the words to actually say what I want to say, and I want to do it justice. This August, 4 days after my birthday, my mum took her life. It's obviously been a very painful time for me. It's not anything that I obviously expected that I would be going through. It's something that you hear happens, but it's not something that you ever have to expect to go through yourself. I've had depression and I've had suicidal urges, so I know the feelings that can go through your head. So basically, when growing up, my mum was different. And it wasn't something that I noticed while I was growing up, because you have your normality, and outside of that normality, you don't really have access to. So I grew up with two parents who fought, didn't like each other, a mum who was neurotic, paranoid, always very worried and stressed about things. But at the time, that's what I was used to. I would grow up and I would see my friends with two loving parents who loved each other and loved their kids. And I would be like, what is wrong with you? I would see me as a normality and them as something different. So I thought I just had a normal mother. And I didn't have the best childhood. It wasn't really to do with my parents completely. It was other things as well. So basically, there was this dynamic in the household as my dad, who was a bit older, would go out and work. He would make the decisions. He would, decide what to do with money and things. My mum had a say, of course, but she definitely lent on him a lot. Even though they despised each other, he was definitely a big part of her life. So when he died in 2012, despite the fact that we had about 2 or 3 months warning, her life completely fell apart. She had to do. My brother did a lot of the funeral arrangements, and all of a sudden her world was thrown into chaos. And I did a lot to help her. I'd look things up online. I would take her out to places. I would do all these things that I could to help her, kind of thing. And it was more than what a son would usually do for a parent. It was more of a reverse role. It was more of a role reversal where I would do things, where I would take on the role of the parent, and she was the child. Then what happened is I got into my relationship and decided that after 2 years of being in this relationship, we were ready to move out of home and live separately. We told my mum. My mum didn't take it very well, because she, in her mind, thought I would be living at home until I was about 30. Probably in her head, she thought I'd be living there forever. It was not something that should occur, that I would grow up and be independent and move out. Another thing is she was taking my Centrelink earnings to help to pay for rent and things, which, if you will, was my kind of board. So she was obviously panicked that without that money that she would not be able to sustain life. So what happened was I didn't grasp how big it was. Basically, she said, "I know you didn't like me, but I never thought you hated me," which was obviously not true. I didn't feel that way at all. I wasn't moving out in spite. I was moving out to begin my life. I wasn't abandoning her. I would definitely still be in her life. But it was hard to make her understand that. Got to the point where I moved out. Everything seemed okay. I thought she would just find a new place to live that was cheaper. But she didn't. It was about a week before the lease would run out and that she would have to move, and she still hadn't found a new place. My brother had to come up from Melbourne. He had to help her move. He helped her find this unit that she didn't want to move into at all, but they didn't have much option. The unit was fine, but it was below her standards. So she began this life where she was in this, where she had like mental health care services kind of checking and looking after her, helping her with things, taking her out, all this sort of stuff. And I would have to come and I would still come and have to help her do things. She would ring me up every other day and she would say how panicked she was, all this adrenaline was rushing through her and no one was understanding her problems and that there was no solution. I would give her logical solutions, but she wouldn't take it. She wasn't really connecting logic the way other people would. She definitely had support networks. My brother and I were in, contact. We were helping her. She had a lovely neighbour and her kids were a very big support network for her. She had the care team. She had a lot of, I guess, support, if you will. But she would still feel panic. Eventually it got to the point where she was checked in for voluntary admission at a psychiatric institution where she stayed for several months. It didn't seem to help her that much, but she was getting meals fed to her, she was being taken care of, she could, leave, within constraints for like a day trip kind of thing. So then anyway, when she got out, I thought it would be too much of a transition to go from kind of this full care environment to being back at home, not being able to take care of herself. So I suggested that she come stay with me for a few days to a week to kind of acclimatize. And she was doing, I guess, pretty well at my house. She was enjoying, going for walks, she was enjoying food, watching TV again, things all like that. It was time to go home. She said on the day that we were meant to take her home, she said she had a fall, just like a fall out of bed. So it seemed that she was kind of exaggerating her symptoms again to avoid going home. So I took her to the doctor just to make sure she didn't have a concussion. Anyway, she went home, and eventually, what happened was when she went home, she wasn't eating. She pretty much shut herself in the house. She didn't eat or do anything for 3 days. And this was problematic, of course. She said this was just normal behavior. This is what she did sometimes. So of course it's not normal to not eat for several days. So she went back to the psychiatric institution for, again, a few months. When she got out for the second time, she was doing better. She was more embracing the fact of living in this unit. She met her neighbour as well at this time, who was really helpful. I didn't want to leave her at home by kind of living by herself at this point. We wanted to get her into a kind of retirement or aged care facility. Unfortunately, kind of the aged care facilities was all about more the people who physically couldn't really do things or had dementia, or people who needed kind of nurses and care. Because my mum was physically healthy, they weren't really keen on having her in that environment. We couldn't afford a retirement village simply because it's privatized and you have to pay up front. So at the end of the day, this wasn't really working. So we said in this situation that at least for now she could stay until the end of the lease, and then maybe at the end of the lease we would look at having her come up and live near me so I could help her more. So when the lease was running out, however, she had a neighbour and things. She didn't want to go through the expense of having to move again. So she agreed to re-sign the lease for another year. I wasn't really happy about this, but I had to accept that I couldn't force her to move. That while she had trouble making decisions, I couldn't make decisions for her. So I agreed to let her stay there. Then my birthday came around. I turned 24. She rang me for my birthday. She obviously was still stressed and everything, but she seemed no different from normal. That Thursday, her care worker took her to see me. We kind of were at the park. She was very anxious. She was pacing up and down, saying the adrenaline was all through her body. It was in her hair. She wasn't, listening. She wasn't, focusing on the environment. I was trying to tell her certain tricks that I've been taught by my psychologist to calm down and kind of be in the moment and ground yourself. But none of this was helping. She just wasn't really listening. And it was more than a belligerence. She literally couldn't. It's almost she couldn't comprehend what I was saying. At the end of was about a 1 to 2 hour visit. She wasn't, okay, but I really tried, all these different things. There's nothing I could really say in that particular moment. So, it was just bye mom, I'll see you next time. But I never did, because the next day, the day of my birthday party, she took 70 Seroquel tablets. So basically, while I was, having my birthday party, she was obviously in a lot of pain and decided that was the end. So she took all these tablets. We know this because the next day, the Saturday, the neighbour came around to visit her and there was no response. Then the Monday, the care team came around. They knocked on the door, there was no response, so they left, which is what I have an issue with. But I've already kind of gone through and I've talked about that, and there's hopefully going to be some changes in policy. But anyway, the care team left. They came back the next day, the Tuesday, knocked on the door, no response. They left a note. Left again. So they came back then on the Thursday. The note wasn't touched, there was still no response. So that's when they called me as next of kin and said, we haven't heard from your mum in a while, maybe you can go around and check on her. So I said, I can't today, because they called me about maybe it was 4 or 5 in the afternoon, and I just done a 6-day work week. I was exhausted, so I said, I can't do it today, I'll do it tomorrow. So I met up with a friend that morning, we had breakfast together. Then I went to go to her unit. The whole way over going to her unit, I had this feeling. Part of me was thinking, maybe she'd be fine, and I'd just be like, you can't do this. But part of me was thinking that it was different this time, that something was very, very wrong. So the care team got the keys from the real estate agent. They had trouble with the door, so I unlocked it. I went in first, calling out mum. There was no response, of course. Went past the bedroom. I didn't see her at first because it looked like the sheets were just all bundled up. Then we realised she was in the bed and that she had passed away. She was, there was kind of blood everywhere from vomiting blood from all the tablets. And obviously in that moment, I was torn apart. I started hyperventilating. I was having a panic attack, crying. It was just something that I couldn't really... It was something I was not ready for. My mum was physically healthy. It wasn't something that I had expected. I expected that she'd have maybe 20 more years. In fact, I told her last time I saw her that she probably would have 20 more years. But the reality is, while she was physically healthy, it was very clear that she wasn't mentally healthy. It was clear that, despite the fact that there probably were solutions to all our perceived problems, she couldn't see that. They weren't solutions for her. So in her mind, the only solution was to end it all. I didn't know she had suicidal urges. Unfortunately, it's ironic because I'm the one person who probably could have related. In the February, she reported suicidal urges to her doctor, and she'd also previously told my brother that she had suicidal thoughts, but would never do that to her children. So were there signs? Yes. And that is where, that's where the guilt comes in. It's like, could I have done more? Even though I did an awful lot, you can always do more. But would it have made a difference? Probably not at this point. I think that the right kind of help wasn't out there. I don't know what the kind of right help would have been, but that wasn't it. So obviously it's very painful. I love my mother very much. Being 24 and having, no parents is something that I've been struggling with, especially dealing with my own depression. And I'm not angry at her. I don't think that she thought about this for weeks on end. I think it was just kind of a loose notion, but something that night figured that she had to do. I don't think she was thinking about me or my brother. I don't think she was thinking about her friends. I don't think these things were logically occurring to her. I think she was just thinking that I have these problems that there's no solution to. The only solution is this drastic thing to do. And obviously it's very hard to deal with. My life is never going to be as it was before. As they say in my support group, you don't go back to normal, but there's a new normal. You can have joy again. It's just a different sort of joy. Obviously, I'm not the first person to have to go through this, and I won't be the last. But I really wish there was more of a solution to this problem. I really wish more effort would be put into, solving these problems. I wish that, mental illness was taken as seriously as, some physical illnesses are. People don't realize that, mental illness and depression and other things such as bipolar and schizophrenia can kill, and they do kill an alarming amount of people. I wish that something could have been done so that I still have a mother. But at the end of the day, I am okay. I'm not great, but I'm okay. I know that the internal strength that I've shown through this situation shows character and shows how far I have come, and it shows the kind of man I am today. I think this would be a great topic for me to explore in a film when I find the right way to approach it. Yeah, that's my story. I'm dealing with me and my mother's suicide. I just wanted to share it with you. Yeah, thank you for taking the time to watch this video. Thank you for all the support and love. I'll see you next time.